Michael, thank you so much for being here today. I greatly appreciate it. For those who've not met you, share with everyone your name and what you do at CertainPath for now.
So I am Michael Zeller. I'm one of the coaches. So I've kind of coached across all affinities, so all trades, and obviously I do some training and expo presentations as well.
That's right. And you've been part of the team. How many years has it been?
Almost 9.
Almost 9. Not that you're counting or anything.
No, I'm kind of counting the days right now.
That's
though,
right.
For obvious reasons.
For a good reason, you have decided you're going to retire and do, I don't know, can you have more fun in retirement than being with us? Really?
I don't know. It's yet to be seen.
We're going to give it a shot, though.
Yes. As much as I love you guys, I think it's time for me to at least take it and give it a shot. Yes, without a doubt.
That's great. Well, we're happy for you. We're sad to see you go. But I was like, what a better time than now to grab you and do a little, I want to call it a life review because you're not dying. But I was like, let's look at your career and what a career it's been and how it led to here and what you've been doing for us and lives you've been impacting. So I got to start from square one.
Okay.
So your youth, where'd you grow up?
Grew up in New York, Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York.
Yep.
What talk about your folks. Who were your folks? What did they do?
So grew up in a family of 5 children. I'm second to youngest, 2 boys, 2 girls. So I have an older sister, 2 older brothers, a younger sister, and my mom and my dad. And it was a stereotypical New York, Long Island family, stay-at-home mom taking care of the kids, dad working 2 and 3 jobs, kind of to make ends meet and provide a good life. But it was that stereotypical play stickball out in front of the house in the suburbs, that kind of thing. Yeah.
What are your fondest memories of back then? Like, what are some things you learned and remember?
I don't know. There's a lot, and this is very strange, and this is the thing that I've always struggled with, is that there are some people that live in the past, and they love looking back, and there's some that live in the moment, and there's some that are always looking towards the future. And I think one of my failings, and it's been one of my strengths, is that I don't look back very often. I continue to look forward. And that has hurt me because I lose the moment. And I think talking about retirement, that's what I'm trying to catch up with is the moment. But to answer your question directly, I think my fondest memories are just, spending time with my brothers and sisters when there were 0 responsibilities and the only thing you worried about is what you were going to do today for fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Looking back now, you're 60, right? 60 years old now?
I'm gonna be 63.
Oh, 63.
In a couple months.
Man, that creeps up fast. But looking back, though, from your childhood to now, what certain values did your parents kind of bestow on you that have shaped you and helped you throughout your working career and just in general dealing with people?
So I think there's a couple things, and I know there's probably some questions you're going to ask that this would be part of the answer as well, but I think with my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, and she had 5 pretty wild children, and her whole life was family.
Yeah.
And I think for her, it was constant work because there were, for the most part, almost 4 years between each kid, almost.
Oh, wow.
And that meant that there was always a young kid, and there was always somebody that was an adolescent probably creating problems for her.
Yeah.
So I know her life was tending to us, and it was constant work. And she never ever looked away from that responsibility, right?
Yeah.
We always were fed. We always had a clean house. And my dad, he worked 3 jobs, which was 6 days a week. And even though he had a good job as an aircraft mechanic, we only really got to see him that 1 day a week.
Yeah.
And I learned a lesson about having a great work ethic and why you do work.
Yeah.
And when I teach class, I always ask people what motivates them because they need to know what motivates their team. And a lot of them do say money, and that's a great answer if that's what motivates you, and it has motivated me.
Yeah.
But I always say, is it money? Because if I gave you a bucket of money but told you couldn't do anything with it, is it still motivating?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Sure.
It's not money for the sake of money. It's money for the sake of what can you do with that money.
Right.
So my dad worked very hard, but for my dad it was always about taking care of us. And then when he did have that day off, it was about spending time with us.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't get to see him as much as I would have liked, his time home was always dedicated to us.
Right. And now you appreciate those special moments with family.
Without a doubt. And you know, if I can, in retrospect, I think the biggest takeaways that I have in life is that you never know what you truly have until you don't have it anymore. So try to look around and look through the eyes of, what if I weren't here tomorrow? What if they weren't here tomorrow?
Yeah.
How would you act or treat them, or how would you treat yourself?
For sure. That's good. Boy, we got deep real fast.
Wow, really? I need to take another sip of water here.
All right, so let's childhood, but high school, you said, I know you always had a love for cars, right?
Yes.
You had some, I think, fun cars in high school and stuff like that. And were you thinking even then, mechanic?
No.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, I mean, what my dad did, it's very interesting because what he always taught us is that I would say, Dad, why don't you call somebody to do that, whether it was electrical work, plumbing around the house. Like, my dad would do everything, even though he was an aircraft mechanic, or work on cars. And he always had an older car that he was restoring, and we would take to car shows. Now, we were not a wealthy family by any means, but he was always able to have some kind of fun vehicle in the family. And what he taught us early on was the only difference between you and a professional, many times, and I don't want to talk down professionals because too often people don't have that skill level.
Sure.
He said, is that they get paid to do it. So if you have something that's in front of you, a task, learn how to do it properly and then do it for yourself. So that translated into learning how to fix my own car, partially because I couldn't afford to, and I don't think my dad could really afford to be that person that just hired people to do things.
Yeah.
So we learned to do things on our own. So I always worked on cars as a hobby.
Yeah.
But that's nowhere near what I wanted to do in my livelihood. So it's always funny what we set out to do and what we ultimately do.
What were you planning on doing?
I mean, in high school, I wanted to be an artist. I mean, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be Captain Kirk. I wanted to pilot the Star Trek Enterprise. And then real life came about.
Yeah.
And I wanted to
mess that all up.
Yeah, I didn't really make it there. And then I wanted to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I wanted to paint and build metal sculptures.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I realized I probably couldn't make a living doing that, and I went to college for psychology.
You got a psychology degree.
No, I don't.
Oh, you went to school for psychology.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Well, we're getting all the demons
But no, I went to school for 2 years with a liberal arts degree, and then went to 2 different schools for psychology.
Okay.
But with me, Bob, I put myself through school.
Yeah.
So I'd work a year, save the money, because my dad didn't have the money to do that.
Yeah.
I'd save the money. I was able to live in our house and, got that benefit.
Sure.
And he said, as long as you're going to school, don't worry about living at home. So I put myself through school, and I started to age out in school where I felt like I realized that there is value to a good education.
Yeah.
But oftentimes they weren't teaching me anything that I thought would really provide value long term. And I started to worry about my future as a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I started to view, although I believe in therapy, I started to view a lot of psychology as pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And I had to come to terms with the fact that if I don't truly believe in something, how am I ever going to be good at it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So then all of a sudden you've got all this education that you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah,
I'm getting I'm early 20s. I got to figure something out. So what next?
I literally quit school one day. I just walked out on a class after I got into a discussion with the teacher, and he told me that let's just settle this argument. Not to say, let's settle it because there's 2 viewpoints. He told me, let's just settle it. I'm the head of the psychology department and you're just a student. So let's just say my opinion counts, yours doesn't.
Whoa.
And I said, that you're a big fish in a little bowl and you get to talk to me that way. And it escalated to the point where I got up and thought, maybe this isn't the line I should be in.
Yeah.
So I left. And fortuitously, very shortly thereafter, one of my best friends, who was an aircraft mechanic, left Delta and called me and said, why don't we open up a body shop together? Because one of the jobs I was doing as I was putting myself through school, one of the 3 jobs, was repairing and painting cars.
Oh, okay. So talk about that business. How did it start? How did it slowly grow, quickly grow?
So, we didn't have the ability, neither one of us at that point, to just turn around and say, let's take out a loan, or we weren't funded. So he sold an old Chevelle he had, and I sold an old Camaro I had, and we pooled our money together, and we opened up a body shop, and we made it our point never to create debt while we were in business. But looking back, it might not have been the smartest thing because it obviously slowed our growth.
Sure.
Sometimes debt is good if it's going to propel you. It's not good if you're taking it on just to take it on.
Right.
So it was very difficult, a lot of hard work, and we definitely needed each other because he was more technically adept and I was more people adept.
Yeah.
So we made a good pair when we first started the business.
Right.
As it grew, and we added folks and technicians and a front office person, we started to diverge at that point.
How many techs did you ultimately get up to?
If I remember back, I probably had 5 technicians at a certain point, and someone in the office. I was still owner operator at that point.
Yeah.
But there was our paths and our need for one another. And the advice I would give business owners is, if you don't need a partner, don't take on a partner.
Right.
And it doesn't diminish. Barbara, you're killing me.
Easy
in the very beginning, we absolutely needed one another based on our skill sets.
Yeah.
But as the business became successful, our viewpoint and our goals kind of diverged.
Yeah.
And then it started to become a marriage where we may no longer need one another.
Right.
So it came to a point where either one of us had to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get into the split, you guys were in business together for
13 years.
13 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons maybe you learned as a small business owner, entrepreneur, that phase that have kind of helped shape and shift your paradigm in working with small business owners as you have the last 9 years here?
So, unfortunately, there was no SGI or CertainPath for body shops.
Right.
So what I would suggest is don't learn things the hard way if you don't have to.
Right.
I mean, we definitely took our lumps very early because we didn't know what we didn't know, and there was no one to help us.
Yeah.
So my lesson is, if you can avoid getting beaten down or making mistakes needlessly, when there is an organization or someone that can point you in the right direction and help you avoid those landmines, absolutely it becomes total value to you, because we used to make jokes every time we made a mistake, and I'd say, well, that cost us a lot of money. And we'd go, well, we'll chalk it up to education.
Yeah.
But what ultimately happened is we started to look at each other saying we're going to be the most highly educated, poorest businessmen around if we keep making all of these mistakes. So if I could turn the clock back, I don't think there was an organization like CertainPath, but I would have looked for outside help or mentorship so I could avoid those. And from the business owners that are starting out, that would be the biggest lesson. And the other thing is always lead by example. I watched so many people I knew open small businesses, and as soon as there was a level of success, they started to buy things. And they started to feel successful, so they stopped pushing.
Right.
And one of the sayings that I like is that success breeds complacency.
Yeah.
That once you feel that level of success, and you see that with boxers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have won a world boxing championship and only won it for one fight.
Yeah.
And then the next fight they lost it, never regained it.
Sure.
Because they felt this level where they didn't have to work as hard or train as hard, and they lost it.
Sure.
And I think that's another thing. When you start becoming successful, let that feed on itself, and don't go out and buy things or pull yourself away because now I'm successful.
Right.
Because there's levels of success, and you've only reached the first at that.
That's good. The partnership thing, I know you've seen it. I've seen it a lot in this group. It's like, oh man, it's not a good fit. You guys are not a good fit together. So ultimately, you decided for you, like, I need to remove myself from this.
Think about the best thing you've learned on this podcast, or any podcast ever. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how life-changing was it? Did it change whether you could take vacations or where you vacation? Did it change how much time you spend with your family or what you could provide for your family? Now, I'm not saying learning new things that make a smaller impact isn't helpful. Of course it's helpful. So is hearing from people who've been in your shoes and who know what you're going through. It's why we made this podcast. And we hope you get new insights, tips, and techniques from it, as well as encouragement. But if you're looking for a truly life-changing transformation, then information alone isn't going to do it. You need a coach. I'm Rebecca Cassel, CEO of CertainPath, and I know you need a coach because I needed one when I was in your shoes, running a home service business where I was the CEO, the head trainer, the ops manager, the salesperson, the call taker, and everything else. That's why I'm certain that knowledge isn't enough. Because I'd been a coach to home contractors before starting my company. I knew all the stuff, the right things to do, the procedures and strategies, and I still needed a coach. Fortunately, I had one, so I was able to grow that tiny HVAC company large enough to sell it for life-changing money. And since coming back to what was then SGI and coaching other home service businesses through that same life-changing journey, I know what's possible when you're given the tools and a coach and a community. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'll prove it to you. If you've got 90 minutes, I have a free virtual starter session that'll beat any podcast or seminar you've ever taken for delivering truly transformative content. It's free. No commitment. We just want to share with you 4 major things that we do think are the first steps to transforming your business. And all you have to do is go to mycertainpath.com and book a starter session. Because as helpful as our podcasts are, I'm betting you're going to find our starter sessions to be the best first steps you can take towards true transformation.
It's not because my partner was a bad person.
For sure.
And, I don't know if he'll ever listen to this podcast, but if he ever did, he wasn't a bad person at all.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we absolutely needed one another, and we both would have failed without one another.
Right.
But at a certain point, our visions diverged. We were going in 2 different directions, and it was either I buy him out or he buy me out.
Right.
And another lesson is if you have a partnership, have a buy-sell agreement, so that way there's parameters based on what the value of the business is worth, because it makes that split so much easier and takes a lot of stress away from that. We did not have that. We worked it out in the end. I don't communicate with him anymore. It's been a lot of years. I hope to, once I retire, reach back out to him and see how he's doing. The shop is still in business.
Oh, neat.
So I feel really comfortable that 30 to 40 years after we started this thing, it's still operating.
That's great.
But we just went in the wrong direction.
Sure.
And if you're going to go in with a partner, just know that could happen and think ahead when it does. What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you leave and you take a position with Enterprise.
Yes.
Correct. How did that come about?
So when I owned the body shop, Enterprise just moved on to Long Island. That was about the year, somewhere in the mid-'80s, where Enterprise exploded.
Right.
Because most car rental companies rented to vacationers.
Right.
And Jack Taylor, the original owner or original founder of Enterprise, decided that there are a lot of people whose cars are in a wreck or in the shop that need cars for a short term, maybe a day or 2 rental or 30-day rental. And he found that niche. And some of the insurance laws changed, and that business blew up. So they marketed us, and we started recommending Enterprise.
Yeah.
And what I found at that company is I was so impressed with the quality of people, how hard they worked, how smart they were, how entrepreneurial they were.
Yeah.
And I always thought, wow, if I ever left the shop, I would want to go work for them. And I started, as I was getting towards the end of my tenure at my shop, I started reaching out to Enterprise, and I found out they are always hiring. Another lesson to our members and other business owners is always be looking for talent. Don't say I have enough, because Enterprise is always hiring. And I moved to Florida because my family left New York, and went there without a job. And, just always knew I'll make it work, and applied to Enterprise. And I think they interviewed me at first just because it was a courtesy interview, because I used to recommend them. Because they started the interview with me saying, hey, we're interviewing you, but just know we don't really have any positions open today.
Yeah.
And by the end of the interview, the HR director said, or the recruiter said, when can you start?
Oh,
I need to move you to the next level of the interview. So I think they set themselves up to be able to kick me to the curb if they didn't like me.
Yeah. So what were you interviewing for? What was the position?
So a management trainee position. So that was kind of difficult because I went from business owner where I was making a good living. I wasn't wealthy and I wasn't building this monstrous business entity. I was, like many of our members start out, I was somebody that was self-employed, making a good living, had a business, but I don't know that it was truly the business I could have built if I had the knowledge I have now, right?
Sure.
So I started as a management trainee. So I started making about, 30% of what I was making as paying myself within my business.
Yeah.
And most of my friends were in business and they laughed at me. They said, why are you going for a trainee position? You were an owner and you're going to make how much?
Yeah.
But I knew the way Enterprise set their model up, it was all based on getting to a management position and then you were paid off of your net. And I just knew that I could blow that up.
Yeah.
So I took the risk and came in as a management trainee. Older, I was 39, older than everybody else. Everyone that was managing me were freshly out of college.
Right. What was the biggest adjustment going from working for yourself, managing your own schedule, to, okay, and that is a very corporate place. I know enough about it to know it is very corporate. So what big adjustment was that?
I think the biggest adjustment first was that I was the business owner and I had been successful.
Yeah.
So when I moved here, I didn't move here fresh out of college, eating ramen noodles, and to have customers come in kind of looking down at you at times because you're only the guy at the rental counter.
Right.
So there was an adjustment where I had to understand that I have more personal value than sometimes the customers might have treated me.
Sure.
And the other thing was that I had to humble myself to understand that even though I was working with people that were younger than me and they were managing me, that I needed to be a sponge.
Right.
Because Enterprise grew to a multi-billion-dollar business and they had something that I didn't have, which was knowledge.
Yeah.
So I walked through the door acting very humble and just anybody that I could interact with, I wanted to first view them and think, what are the qualities that I don't like, or their behaviors I don't like, and no, I can't do those behaviors. And I make a note of that. I cannot act that way.
Right.
And when I found folks that were good at their role or good leaders or good managers, I attached myself to them and just started absorbing as much as I possibly could.
Sure.
And it worked out well because the whole idea of a management trainee is to get to a management spot because at that point you're paid off of net and you have your own branch and then ultimately go to an area where you have 8 or 9 branches and whatnot. And I got promoted pretty quickly through the system. Yeah. And I think in part it was because I humbled myself to feel comfortable that people had knowledge that I didn't and I had to learn from them.
That's a good lesson a lot of people could take. So you were there for a number of years. How
almost 15 years.
15 years. How did your role progress?
So can I brag?
Of course.
So I mean,
this is the final hurrah. You just let it all hang out.
In Southwest Florida at the time, they usually said it would take 3 years to make it to a management position. And I think because of how I came in, feeling that I was behind schedule because I already had some mileage on me and that I needed to move quickly, I was able to get myself promoted to a management position within a full branch manager to one of the biggest branches in that group within a year.
Wow.
And the irony behind that is the assistant managers that managed me when I started became my assistant managers in the branch. Yeah. So it proved to me that if you allow yourself the opportunity to learn and get away from this is how I've always done it, right? Or this is how it always worked for me, and just throw that all aside. And it's a lesson that I try to teach the members here. Right. Is that if you can get rid of all those biases, what's going to happen is you're going to actually move a lot more quickly because you're going to be open to the ideas that others have used to become successful. And then I quickly got promoted to an area manager. And at a certain point in this journey, I managed a team of, it was probably over 100. multiple locations and some subcontractors, and so there was a lot that I was responsible for.
And if I'm not mistaken, when you and I have talked about this previously, it got to some point where it was like they were just grinding you guys, right? That was
so the thing with enterprise from a positive aspect is that they train you so well and they expect so much of you. And once again, we preach here about reporting in the industries that we serve. If you want to really understand how to grow, you need to understand your numbers. And what they do there is they train you as a management trainee, and you cannot become a manager until you understand HR, until you understand accounting. You have to be able to do some accounting yourself. You have to understand you live out of your P&L.
Right.
You have to understand, have a full sales process. So you basically have to be good at every role before they'll let you run one of their branches. So from that perspective, it was a fantastic learning experience. But from the downside of it, because they've given you so much, they expect so much.
Right.
So in that organization, you're on point 24/7, and although they try to talk about work-life values, which they try to work through, if you really want to be successful there, sometimes you're throwing the life out and just doing the work. And the fun part of it is when we talk about reporting here, we talk about a daily management report and, your average ticket. There was literally hundreds of reports they would funnel to us each day as managers or area managers that you could funnel through that they expected you to look at. And then at a certain point, they realized, because they tracked if the reports were being opened, which was interesting, because you couldn't open every report, and they started realizing they're creating these great reports, but people aren't looking at them. So then they made a report to report on you to tell you if you were looking at the reports or not. And it just became ironic. But once again, it becomes a grind, because when you own your own business and you make a mistake, you lose money.
Yeah.
Or you lose people.
Right.
If you work at an organization like Enterprise, which is built on this hierarchy, and everyone's paid off of the profits once they get into management, when you make a mistake, not only do you personally lose money, but you lose money for the branch. You could lose an employee, and there's several levels above you that lost money that want to have a conversation with you. So it becomes a high-pressure situation that I enjoyed for years, because the best part about it was I got to help younger folks coming in to train them to become better managers and leaders. But as my position grew, it became more of asset management, pricing management, car moving management, and it started to get away from what I really loved.
Right.
And they paid well, they always treated us well, and I started to feel like a paycheck player. And at that point I realized, if I'm only doing something for the money, I can't be good at it.
Right. So you shift to American Express.
Well, actually, that was kind of, there was SGI, CertainPath between that.
Oh.
So one of a former employee of SGI, CertainPath, she had moved over and took a leap of faith from Enterprise to come work for SGI, which was a small company with not a big footprint on the internet. So there wasn't a lot at that time that people knew about the company. She discussed it with me. I said, take the shot. Sounds like it's going to be perfect for you. As soon as she started, she called me up and said, you need to come work for this company. It is exactly what you are, and you're going to love this. So I'll name drop. So I got a call from Paul Riddle, and he asked me if I wanted to go to lunch. Now, unfortunately, Paul's not with us anymore, but anybody that knows Paul knows the amazing human being he was. He took me to lunch, and we had this great lunch, and I loved him. And he said at the end of lunch, I really like you. I don't have a position, but when I do, would you come work for me? And I said, that's like a loaded poker question, Paul. You're hedging your bets on me? Why don't you ask me when you have a position? And he laughed like you did. He goes, that's fair. He goes, give me a little time because we're making some moves, and I'll give you a call. So I left that lunch, and I'm like, wow. This is great. There's life after Enterprise. I really can see something that I can go back to what I really love to do, right?
I can picture that conversation.
Yes. And lo and behold, I never got a phone call. So several months later, I had another friend that went to American Express, said the same thing. Director called me from American Express, said, hey, we got openings. You want to interview? Yes. They go, okay, you're hired. Started working at American Express. It was primarily a sales job, although it was kind of listed as a customer service, let's help businesses grow.
Oh, okay.
But it was a sales job, which I like sales as well.
Yeah.
But it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I was
Sure.
looking for more of a mentoring, coaching role. But they paid well.
Yeah.
So I decided to make the jump. So I left Enterprise and I went to American Express.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks after Enterprise, I'm working at American Express. 6 months later, I'm doing really well. I'm actually making a lot of money. And I get a call from Paul Riddle and he goes, "Hey, are you ready to come work for me? You want to leave Enterprise?" And I laugh and go, "Paul, I left Enterprise 6 months ago." And phone went silent. And Paul goes, "I lost my opportunity." I said, "No, not necessarily."
Yeah.
And we chatted and the rest became history.
Wow. So what were your first thoughts? Like, what was your first day? Do you remember what was your first day? You remember that?
Well, my first thoughts, I'll share my interview with you. How does that sound?
That'd be good.
So I went from a company, at that time, Enterprise was a $25 billion revenue company, give or take.
Yeah.
It's privately held, but give or take, right? And then American Express was $155 billion.
Yeah.
And then I go in for the interview to this company I can't even find on the internet back then. When you typed in SGI, it pulled up some company in Germany or something. Like, it was very strange. Like, at that time, I believe Rebecca had just bought the company, just literally a half a year before this. And the changes she made is amazing. But at that time, there was not a big footprint.
No.
So I was a little skeptical about this. So I kind of went in with the idea that I even though I'm coming in for an interview with David, I didn't know if I wanted to work here yet. So I walk in the office. It was a really nice place, nice environment. Everybody was friendly. But I'm looking around and there's like 25 people in this office. I'm used to going into, I had branches that had 70 people working at it. I'm working for a business now. So I walked in. So I really wasn't sure. And I didn't go in with the pressures of an interview. I just went in to have a conversation. Yeah. And I talked with David, and I immediately thought, this is one of the sharpest guys I've ever met. And during the interview, he goes, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I said, "Yes." I go, "David, you're very sharp." He goes, "Oh, thank you." And I'm sure at first he thought I was kissing up. Oh, this guy just wants a job. Yeah. I said, "You left," I think it was Direct Energy at that time. Yep. You left Direct Energy, probably a really good corporate job, to take a leap of faith, which the owner here took by buying the company. Yeah. And you went with her. Yeah. Why? And he explained his reasoning. Yeah. And I thought, if this guy didn't explain it well, there wouldn't have been an interview with Rebecca, is what I thought. But he explained it, and I go, wow, there is something here that I yet, maybe don't see. Yeah. So I took the leap of faith, and I wound up interviewing with Rebecca, immediately loved her. Yeah. And
what was that like?
It was a very short interview. And as you, hopefully our business owners have taken emotional intelligence, one of the classes we offer, right, which is fantastic. Yeah. And one of the things you kind of learn in emotional intelligence is, you kind of want to size up that person you're speaking with to know what kind of communication style they like and how you should communicate. So I could tell as soon as I walked in that Rebecca, if she asks you a question, she wants a direct answer. She doesn't want the around the block answer, right? Yeah. So her questions were direct. She was very nice. She showed me where she's at now as a company and what she's looking to accomplish, her bubble chart that she calls it. Yeah. And I was impressed. And then she asked me a question. She said something similar to, "Can you give me, 5 qualities or 5 words that describe you?" And I didn't realize at the time, and I won't give the answers away for anybody that may be interviewing and watching this podcast, because earn it yourself, right? I'm not making it easy on you. But apparently she was looking for specific qualities based on that. Yeah. And then she asked, "Okay, well, tell me why." And I thought it was a great interview question, because you could tell so much about the 5 things that somebody asks you. And when they ask why, you better have some good answers. Right. Or otherwise, they know you're pulling it out of a hat. And then I said, "Okay, so what's the next step?" And she said, "That's up to you." And I said, "I don't understand." She goes, "Are you leaving American Express to come work for me, or are you staying American Express? Next step is yours. What do you want to do?"
She closed you right there.
And she closed me right there. Yeah. There was no, it was, "Look, we like you. We want you. Do you want to be here?" It was very simple. And I've learned that that's kind of her communication style. She's direct, but nicely direct, right? And I said, "Can I just take 24 hours?" She said, "Absolutely." I said, "I promise to call you tomorrow." And I called and said, "I'd love to work for you."
Yeah. That 24 hours, what were you thinking about?
I was nervous about calling my director at American Express and telling her that I was leaving.
But so you knew this was.
I knew when I walked out of the office that that's what I wanted to do, because the role really fit my strengths and what I was looking to accomplish in my later years.
Yeah.
Bob, I probably shared this, I don't know, but my wife and I do not have children.
Right.
And, at a certain point in your life, you look back and go, wow, I've accumulated all this knowledge and I want to pass it to somebody.
Yeah.
Who do I have to pass it to? And what I realized at a certain point, what I loved about my job at Enterprise was helping to develop people. And that's where I was the happiest.
Right.
And I thought, wow, this is a role where I could help develop business owners.
Yeah.
How could I not be happy every single day?
Right.
And there's something to be said about doing what you like, because when you're a paycheck player, you'll never reach your full potential.
Right.
You might wind up with a couple of extra bucks in your pocket, but you'll probably be miserable.
Yeah.
When you actually do what you love, you're going to try to be the best as you can. And when you're the best you can, my dad always told me, it doesn't matter what you do in life. When you're good at it, people will want to pay you to do it.
Think about the best thing you've learned on this podcast, or any podcast ever. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how life-changing was it? Did it change whether you could take vacations or where you vacation? Did it change how much time you spend with your family or what you could provide for your family? Now, I'm not saying learning new things that make a smaller impact isn't helpful. Of course it's helpful. So is hearing from people who've been in your shoes and who know what you're going through. It's why we made this podcast. And we hope you get new insights, tips, and techniques from it, as well as encouragement. But if you're looking for a truly life-changing transformation, then information alone isn't going to do it. You need a coach. I'm Rebecca Cassel, CEO of CertainPath, and I know you need a coach because I needed one when I was in your shoes, running a home service business where I was the CEO, the head trainer, the ops manager, the salesperson, the call taker, and everything else. That's why I'm certain that knowledge isn't enough, because I'd been a coach to home contractors before starting my company. I knew all the stuff, the right things to do, the procedures and strategies, and I still needed a coach. Fortunately, I had one, so I was able to grow that tiny HVAC company large enough to sell it for life-changing money. And since coming back to what was then SGI and coaching other home service businesses through that same life-changing journey, I know what's possible when you're given the tools and a coach and a community. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'll prove it to you. If you've got 90 minutes, I have a free virtual starter session that'll beat any podcast or seminar you've ever taken for delivering truly transformative content. It's free, no commitment. We just want to share with you 4 major things that we do think are the first steps to transforming your business. And all you have to do is go to mycertainpath.com and book a starter session. Because as helpful as our podcasts are, I'm betting you're going to find our starter sessions to be the best first steps you can take towards true transformation.
You were an HVAC coach at first, right?
HVAC coach, and it was an interesting transition.
Yeah.
Because there was when I say I have to humble myself, there are things I had to learn from the members, as well as teach the members. And I realized at a certain point when I called a member to introduce myself, and I won't mention his name, but he's a great guy, and he was actually playing golf that day, hitting golf balls. And he said, and I'll try to do his accent, he said, who am I speaking to? And I said, this is Michael Zeller, it's your coach.
I know who you're talking about.
Hello, Michael. He goes, you're my coach, are you? And I said, yes. He goes, well, not necessarily. He goes, I need to know a little bit about you. And I said, okay. He goes, well, what are you going to teach me about HVAC that I don't already know? And I said, nothing.
Yeah.
And he goes, what do you mean? I said, if I have to teach you about HVAC, you don't need me. You got bigger problems that I can help with. And he goes, Michael, I like that answer. I think we're going to get along just fine. And it goes to play that I'm not teaching somebody to install an HVAC system, although the truth is I worked on cars. I understand HVAC, I understand electrical systems, I understand mechanical systems. Yeah. I built an extension, I did all of my own electrical, all my own plumbing. I had, the inspector from the counties come in and approve. So I've been that person that has been technical and have done all of that, but I by no means can I go in and troubleshoot an HVAC system. But early on, I understood, and even that conversation helped me understand that my job isn't to teach HVAC, it's to help them avoid the pitfalls of business, which I had. I also did some of the best, some of the worst, and then learned from one of the best companies how to best run a business.
You still had to learn the model. Like, there was still a lot of learning curve, I know.
Yes.
And I remember you as just being very inquisitive. Like you, and which I really admired, because there's a lot of people that just shut up and they'll just fake it, right? But you definitely were not that.
No, I drove every coach in this company and every member crazy. And I think, once again, part of it is having to be humble, because I always use a saying for myself more than anything, that anytime you think you're the smartest person in the room, look around, because you're probably in there by yourself. Because by no means are you the smartest person in the room. There's always people that know more and can help you become better. So I just became that same guy I was at Enterprise. I became a sponge, went to every coach, called every member, and I said, wait, you're talking about what? Explain that to me. And it was great, because our membership, they're really the kind of people that also like helping one another. So when I would say, wait, you're talking about what kind of system? Now, obviously, they didn't know I was Googling it at the same time.
Right.
But I would say, look, I'm not an HVAC technician. Can you walk me through that? And so there was a learning curve, but I think part of what helped me build relationships with the members is I never tried to tell them what they knew better than I did.
Right. And you're vulnerable. You're honest.
Yes.
I mean, and that goes a long way, because they know you're not just faking it. So if you're truthful there, I'm more willing to listen to your advice when you do feel like you come from a place of expertise. So how long do you felt like you felt comfortable? How long did it take?
There's something I kind of teach the new coaches coming in. I teach them that one of my basic rules that I learned very early on was that when a member asks you a question, you have to understand they're probably asking you the wrong question. And your job is to get to the real question. Because as a coach, what you first want to do when they call you and go, hey, it's slow, I need more calls. And your answer is, oh, well, let's talk about marketing, or let's talk about, 4x4, or are you door knocking, or are you putting door hangers, or what are you doing? But the real question, you have to, peel the onion back is, well, before we talk about that, how many calls do you have and what are you doing with them?
Right.
And now that conversation took a different turn, because now what you're talking about is whether they are capitalizing on their calls, and that may turn into, are they treating the customer well and what their service is? So as you peel it back, you have to get to the root of the issue. So I learned early on that you have to get to what the real question was. But to answer your question directly, because it kind of went around the block,
That's good.
is what I learned is that after the first year, I felt like I was a pretty good coach. And then after the first year, the second year, I realized I learned a lot more in my second year to be an even better coach. And I'm here almost 9 years, and every year I reflect and I try to look back on all that I've learned that has made me better than the year before. Some of that comes from the other coaches, some come from our PD&I team, or Rebecca Cassel, or Abigail, or whomever, and a lot of it has just come from listening at expos, talking to like a Gus Santos, or just listening to the members talk, because when you get to a point where you understand what they really need, I started to realize that I had more to give. Right? I couldn't fix an HVAC system, but I really understood how to manage people, or I really understood how to create a good culture, and I started to feel comfortable in the fact that I do have a lot to give. I just had to understand that, and once I peeled their onion back in mine, I thought there are a lot of ways that I could help, and when I can't, there's a lot of resources that I can count on. Other coaches, Abigail, Rebecca, Lon Cassel, there's so many people to go to say, a member needs help and I can't fit that bill. What do we need to do to help them? And I've never had anybody at this organization that has not immediately jumped in to help me, or another coach, or the member.
If I'm not mistaken, one of your early goals was to build a training class, right? You wanted to do that. When was that coming into this job? You knew you wanted to do that, or
no?
Something you learned or figured out?
As you're coaching, you kind of get this. I hope most would, but you kind of get this idea that there are recurring things and trends that happen.
Yeah.
And I started to look at what we do here and realize that we have these amazing, great tools. We teach you how to implement the tools. That's part of what CertainPath does. We teach you the benefits and how to do that, and then we go, okay, we help you implement these, and here's the best practices, go.
Yeah.
And I started to get a lot of questions from members because they were having trouble managing their folks when it came to all of this change and getting the folks to buy into the change. And I started to realize that there was this big gap in we probably need to do a better job teaching them how to be better managers.
Yeah.
And because of what I had been through and all of my trials and tribulations and all of that I learned at enterprise managing, I had a process that I learned years ago that was a process-oriented that helps you to be a coach more than a boss, and that you can follow a step-by-step process to manage. And I put together a class called Developing Effective Managers, where it takes you from how do we start and how do we get to the required or the desired result with your people, and help keep them engaged so they understand that you are coaching them and have their best interests in mind. It's just not about the bottom line. In my world, I never looked at numbers to manage them.
Yeah.
The numbers were the result of the behaviors, so I always trained my people and myself that if I manage my behaviors and I do everything well, the numbers play themselves out and they're good.
Right.
If I don't have the right behaviors, the numbers will never be good, so why manage them? So it's a class that really talks about teaching the owners, managers, how to manage their behaviors and the process to get the best out of their people.
That's the final product. What do you remember the sausage being made? Your first training class, you're building it out. There's a lot to it, right?
Yes.
What are your memories of that?
So, as anything else, it's like baking a cake, I guess. Like I had to sit back and think. There was a lot of reflection on how I did things and how something that had become innate to me, how do I put that into words? Mm-hmm. And because you're a content developer, right? So how do I put it into words? And now I have the basic framework and I could give it to you and say, read it and do it. But now how do I put it in a class? How do I build activities around it?
Right.
How do I build a PowerPoint, which I don't even know how to use PowerPoint. So I kind of taught myself how to
pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. How to do a PowerPoint and then, meet a certain time frame and keep everyone engaged. And I think every step of the way, if you are humble and you know that you don't know it all and just reach out to folks every time you hit a roadblock, maybe unbeknownst to you, but I probably reached out to you 10 times. I didn't know why I was calling you, but it worked out. So I taught the class and the feedback was really good and I felt really good about it. And then it inspired me to do it again with another class.
No, we're going to talk about that. Don't just blow past that. That was Recruit and Retain, right? Which was originally called Culture-Based Growth.
Right.
Yes. So what was the reason for that? Where'd that come from?
So if I asked a member what could they do to make the biggest change in their business, and anybody who's listening to this as a business owner already knows the answer. If I had more or better, if I could find people or keep people that were good, it would take me to the next level.
Yeah.
Really the most difficult part of everything you do in any business is not the widget part of it. Our members don't have difficulty, changing out a panel or putting a roof on. That is not the difficult part. Our members tend to have difficulty. There's the people side of the customer, and then there's the people side of the people you manage and develop, and that is the most difficult part of the business. It's not the widget part, right? So as I started talking to members, I realized that they weren't doing very good job recruiting.
Right.
And if that's the biggest thing you need to do, the next question I would say that would make the biggest difference. How much time are you spending recruiting?
Right.
And you'd find out, well, I have an ad on Indeed. I'm like, okay, what else are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, nothing. I'm like, so this is the thing that's going to make the biggest change in your life and the life of your family, and you put an ad out and you just let it sit. That's it.
When you put it that way, yeah.
Right. And then so then I would listen to them and they'd go, oh my gosh, I finally hired this superstar. I'm so excited. And I'd go, awesome. And 2 weeks later, I'd get on a call with them. They're like, oh, they're gone. Like, what happened? Oh God, I don't know what this part. They got me in the interview because I thought they were going to be great.
Yeah.
And so then I started to see a pattern. And then the last part of the pattern I saw was that when they did find someone that was great, they were losing them.
Yep.
And I would always say, if you lose somebody for $1 more an hour, it's not the dollar.
Yeah.
There's something else going on. So I wanted to build something about, and I did this with Brandon Marshall's help. I have to say, because there's a big culture component in it that I leaned on Brandon, and Brandon helped me develop this. This wasn't all Michael Zeller. But I wanted to be the life cycle of solving that problem. So it started out with, what are the best practices to recruit and how to recruit based on your culture and what you're trying to get. Second part of it was, how do we actually interview to get to the crux of it? Because there are a lot of people that are professional interviewers and they don't really pan out.
Right.
And sometimes we interview and just, well, he said what I wanted to hear, let's hire that person.
Yeah.
So to get the actual right people through the door, third part of the class is, once we find the right people and get them through the door, how do we actually keep them so they're not looking for another job and they feel like there's a future? And then the last part is, how do we hold them accountable while sticking to our core values?
Right.
So there is a level of accountability. So you didn't take all these great 3 steps and people fall off the cliff because they all, run the insane asylum.
Yeah. And it's both are mainstay now. They're great.
Yeah, so
have to take classes. Your legacy continues through those classes, if nothing else.
Thank you.
Looking back, like all the phone calls, all the meetings with members, any certain stories that you go, wow, this is why I do this.
Yes. So I don't want to. I think if you approach coaching in a matter of that, it's not about me, the coach.
Right.
It's about the team, right? So for me, I tried to approach this that it's not about me. I don't want to pat myself on the back when our member succeeds.
Sure.
And so what is very inspirational to me, I had a member one day at Expo, and there's so many of these stories, but I still actually have the piece of paper in my wallet. So we had a speaker, a guest keynote speaker come in, and I think he might have opened, and he talked about the impact you could have in people's lives. I don't even remember, but I remember he said, what I want you to do is take out a piece of paper and just write the first name of someone that has had one of the biggest impacts on you in your life.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's great. I didn't do it because I'm the coach, this is for the members. I'm sitting back, and I thought of my wife or my dad, right?
Yeah.
So later on that day, at the very end of the day, one of our members comes walking up to me, and he goes, here, I didn't even remember this part of the morning.
Yeah.
And he hands me this little scrap of paper, and I open it up, and it says Mike on it. And I look for like a phone number or a note, and I go, David, what is this? And he goes, that was this morning, thank you. And it almost brought tears to my eyes. I walked away, and I was like, oh my gosh, I made an impact on this person.
Yeah.
And so to me, those are the things that have kept me here, because I could have retired earlier.
Sure.
And my wife has pushed me because she's been, retired for 2 years. When are you going to retire? But that is what makes me love this organization and what we do, because there's so many of those stories that I have. And without getting emotional, knowing that this is my last expo.
Yeah.
Having folks come up to me that, honestly, I've only had them in a training class or maybe a call with them. They weren't a member that was assigned to me.
Right.
And I've had people come up to me at this expo and hug me and tell me that I've had an impact on their life. Whew, that is humbling.
Yeah.
When I didn't even realize that I made such an impact, because as a coach, you're not always there at every game.
Sure.
You could see a P&L and you could look at it and think, wow, look, they're moving on. But sometimes you get a glimpse behind the curtain and you realize, wow, I did have an impact. And and that's all I want to know. I don't have to be there during the game. I just need to know that, I was able to provide something that maybe helped somebody in their life.
Yeah.
And I always kind of view what we do here, very much so, one of my favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, mine too.
Right? right? So you just don't know what you don't know. And that is kind of a great saying when it comes to so many things you do in life, but you just don't know the impact you have positively or negatively on people through your life. And I try to be very careful never to have a negative impact and always try to have a positive and hope it goes on after me.
The other thing, and we got to talk about it, I don't want to wrap, but is the training classes was something you wanted to achieve. And the other way you impacted people was the keynotes. Yes. That was something you started. When was the first one? Was it like 5-6 years ago? I mean, I feel like you've done a bunch of them now, right?
So one of the, I'm going to answer this in multiple phases. How's that sound?
That's fair.
So growing up, one of the best things was that my dad always taught me, and he was a big influence on my life, and I probably should have said more about that early, but it was a big influence on my life. He was the biggest influence on my life, but he always said something that if you look at it out of context, it could seem brazen, but that's not why he said it.
Yeah.
He would always say, you are a Zeller, you can do anything. I was not allowed to say I can't. None of the kids would be allowed to say, if he said, I need you to do this, or can you do this, or I'd come home from school and my report card wasn't good, and I'd say, Dad, I can't. He would stop me right there and say, can't is not something you could say in this house, right? Can't say it in this house. You're not allowed to say can't. So it was always, he'd say, you're a Zeller, you can do anything. Never forget that. Now, it might sound pompous, but it's not about being a Zeller. It's just instilling in the person that you have the ability to do everything or anything that you want to do. So in my life, that has led me to jump out of airplanes, to go scuba diving at 100 feet, to do some stupid things at times because I thought I was bulletproof, right?
Yeah.
Because I can do anything. But it's also led me to a lot of the things that I found the most fulfilling in my life, where I've looked at something and said, I can do that. I want to try to do that. Now, you got to be okay with failing and falling on your face, which I've done at times. But I remember watching a keynote speaker here and getting inspired and thinking to myself, I think I can do that. I think I can do a keynote speech. And I think I can inspire. And there's a difference. There's a difference between training somebody at EP, executive perspective. There's a difference of facilitating a training class. There's all these different skill sets that you have to do each of those. But I think there's a whole nother level of skill set to stand in front of 1,000 people and try to share something with them that will make them a better person. Yeah. And I just thought, I want to try that. And this is what I love about our company. And you, as a matter of fact, and Scott, is that I had said to you and Scott, hey, one of these days, before I leave and retire, I'd like to do a keynote speech if you want to give me the opportunity. And you guys both went, yeah, all right, sure. and I thought, okay, that fell flat. So I was like, okay. And then lo and behold, the next Expo agenda comes out when you guys are figuring out Expo, and I go, whoa, what is this? And you're like, oh, you're doing a closing keynote on Thursday or whatever it was. And I'm like, I am? And I go, what do you want me to talk about? And both guys go, whatever you want to.
What to talk about?
Go figure it out. And I was like, okay. So
that's about right. Yeah.
So, and it's allowed me, and the things I love about working here is that it's allowed me to stretch my wings. And it's a good lesson that I try to give the members, because your folks may want and need more in their life. And if you don't give them that opportunity, you're stifling their growth, and you're literally killing them, and they'll go someplace else to find it.
Yeah.
Or you'll kill them in the job and they'll just come in every day to make more donuts. But if you give them the opportunity to actually become better within their role and maybe outside the role and step out and let them fail. If they fail, you're going to get people that feel indebted to you and your organization because you helped them to become a better person. So that's what it led to, and it seemed to have worked out. I've done a lot since then, and it's kind of my cotton candy of my job. Yeah. Like, there's what I do every day, which I love, and it's like going out for a good meal. It's what I love, coaching and teaching. But when I get to go on stage and do something inspirational, that's dessert for me. That's the cotton candy of what I do for a living.
I love it. You were telling the story of coming aboard, and the company was at a weird place. You know, the direct energy thing was bad, and Rebecca definitely bailed this business out, and it's been neat to see it grow. What do you think of, like, what from your perspective, what are your thoughts on how this has evolved and grown, and we're getting more and more people involved in helping them?
So it is interesting because a lot of what I just talked about, I think, is the reason why the company is growing. And one of the things is I'm very observant of leadership and managers, because I want to be led by people that actually are good leaders.
Yeah.
And one of the things that inspired me, and I think is why this company's growing, and then I'll get to the point because I'm going around the block again. But
That's right. It's always good stories. Don't apologize.
One of the things that I loved is that I noticed at our meetings, when we'd have a company meeting and it started out with 30-something, then 40-something, and 50-something, and 60-something, they grew and grew. And I noticed when we have the company meetings, Rebecca always had this one theme of what could we be doing better for our members. And I think she literally said one day, if you had a magic wand and money was no object, and you could wave it, what could we do to make it better for our members?
Right.
And there has never been a point, and I've interacted with her a lot, and I go out of my way to try to interact with her because I learned so much from her, that where I've ever heard her say, no, that we'd never do that because that costs too much money. Now, I'm not saying money's unlimited, because it's not.
Yeah.
But I think the way she has always operated here has been, we have to do whatever we possibly can within reason, because we're also a business, not to go out of business, to do the right thing by our members. And that builds right into the core values, and I share the core values of the company.
Yes.
And it makes me want to work harder. And when I see folks come aboard, the amazement I have, and I told you this really early on, if you remember, and I said, I told Bob, and I'm not blowing smoke up your dress.
How'd you know where's a dress?
I know.
Now you just gave everybody.
I know of your kilt was that you're extremely talented, and I just looked around and I was like, how is this organization getting so many talented people that are so giving of their time and energy to one another and to the members? And that's where this has changed. I've watched this organization change and grow, and as it's grown, I'm still flabbergasted at the amount of talent and raw heart that we've been able to recruit and keep in this organization, which I think is why it's grown by leaps and bounds, not just content-wise, what we offer the members, but talent-wise. So there's such a deep bench now in every department that is what I see as the biggest change, that as the company's grown, it hasn't lost focus on the fact that good people create a good product.
Yeah.
And that the product is actually built for really good people.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing the right thing by your customers, which are our members, you're not doing the right thing at all. You can't be here.
No, I agree. Yeah, to me, it's just to talk a little bit. To see the lives and the changes in people, and you just go, wow. And they're working hard at it, and they want to change. It's like, how can you not be inspired to do whatever it takes? You know, you've given a lot to this group. But I know you've gained something as well, being around all these people. What are some things you're like, boy, I really can take this away?
Yes, I think that, and this is due to all the members that I've interacted with. This is due to the folks that I've interacted with and become friends with, membership and working here, and a lot of the leaders that I have met that are just phenomenal leaders. I think I've learned to be more deliberate in what I say and what I do, because everything we say and do has an impact, more so than I ever have thought about in the past. And I think I'm getting older, and usually as people get older, I always feel like, and those that are older than me don't take this as offensive, but I think as we get older, sometimes we kind of get duller. Like I think we don't critically think as we should.
Right.
And I think what this position has done for me, and interacting with all of those folks I talked about, and hearing all of these issues in business, is it's allowed me to become a much better critical thinker, because each day is not so much about me or one thing that I'm doing. I'm thinking about multiple problems for multiple members and multiple challenges, and trying to work with that member to think through the best way to get over or past that challenge or over that hurdle. And it's allowed me to think very, very critically. And I think as I've gotten older, and I think this company is, and I told this, I actually thanked Rebecca yesterday for this. I think I've become a better person overall, at least in my own eyes. And I feel like I have much better clarity of thought than I've ever had.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, Bob, is a lesson for members, is that I have learned to, I've always been goal-oriented, but I've learned to talk with the members and creating goals for them.
Yeah.
And it really reinforces the fact that if you get in a car with no destination, you're never going to get where you want to go.
Right.
So you have to think through the drive to the destination and what the destination looks like.
Yeah.
And if you can build that path in front of you, ironically, right, build that certain path in front of you, right, that you're more likely to get to your destination than not.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the way my mind has really learned to work since I've been here. And it makes me feel like I'm leaving with a lot of clarity of thought. A lot of members have been saying, are you sure it's your time to go?
Yeah.
You know, are you going to? And I don't know how to reinforce to them that there's been a lot of clarity of thought that has gone into this, because that's a lot of what I've taken away from this.
For sure. You've talked about your dad's influence, and I know you did a keynote that was very good. But the other big influence, even most of your life's been your amazing wife, Polly.
Yes.
And how has she been so supportive, especially now that she's retired and she knows, but she knows you enjoy what you do. So what's her support been like for you in your career?
So I guess I'll start with something that is a Warren Buffett quote. I won't be quoting it, but this is what he said. He has said many times that the most important decision you will make in life is going to be the decision of who you are going to marry. Now, whether you're married, have a partner, it's all the same, right? It's not the technicality of marriage, but it's going to be who you partner yourself with.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that the absolute best decision I ever made in my life was my wife. And when I talk about all the changes here that have made me a better person, I absolutely know that choosing her and her choosing me has changed the person in the course of my life and put me in a path and a direction that God only knows where I would be without being lucky enough to have that choice in front of me for that door to open, right? And just to give you an example of what, rather than to go on about the support, you know, this is an emotionally difficult time for me.
Sure.
I'm leaving an organization that I really love and enjoy what I do. And, you know, as much as you say to yourself and you fool yourself that you're going to keep in touch with everybody and every member of our 1,000+ membership, I'm going to keep in touch with all you and everybody at work, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to fall out of my life that are very meaningful to me now.
Sure.
And so she knows this has been really difficult. It's difficult from the fact that I'm leaving something I love. I'm going into something that I don't know, whether I critically thought through it or not. It's a huge change, not working.
Yeah.
So retirement is a very stressful time when you first consider to do it, which is why some people work till they can't work anymore and drop, right? And she knew coming here was going to be emotionally draining because I knew there was going to be an announcement. I didn't know how it was going to come because I've kind of kept it quiet with most of those members except the ones I had to tell.
Yeah.
So I knew at that point this is going to be really difficult. And I come here and I open up my suitcase, and what do I find in my suitcase? A letter from my wife saying, you know, you should, you know, I won't go into the details, but I should be proud of my decisions, proud of what I've done, that we're starting on a path that's now our path, that we're going to build this great future, and you go and enjoy Expo and just know that it's your time and you've earned it. And I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, that's the kind of person she's been the entire time I've been with her for 34 plus years. So that is the support level that I have always had on all and every decision. And she's smart. I mean, she's been in, you know, worked in corporate America. She was in sales, Campbell Soup, United Natural Foods. I mean, she's worked her butt off and earned her retirement. Yeah. And when we have these conversations and the kind of the opening keynote that introduced Rebecca, you know, some of these conversations come from her because I'll tell her a story about what happened to me and she'll go, that would be a great story to tell your members. And I'll go, it is.
I love that she
Let me
knows
go
it,
build that. So,
Yeah.
so a lot of that has the inspiration for what I do and how I do. It definitely comes from her.
So retirement's scary, right? It's stressful, which is kind of funny for people to hear stressful to retire.
Yes.
You know, you've been good with your money, but it's stressful because you're leaving. But
Yes.
there's another emotion. There has to be other emotions too. It's got to be kind of exciting.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting, right?
Yes.
What are you guys looking to do next? Like, what plans do you immediately have?
So I'll answer like I always do for 3 different answers for
Absolutely.
one question, right?
I wouldn't expect anything else.
So I've been working since I'm like 12 or 13 years old. Like I've done everything from handing out towels in a mafia-owned catering house men's room, right? I mean, I've done everything you could imagine. You name it, I've done that job.
Yeah.
So I've been working since I'm 12 or 13 years old, nonstop, sometimes 3 jobs while I'm going to college. I mean, it's been nonstop. There's never been a point. And as much as you love a job, if I have a day off and I'm sitting by my pool, I'm thinking about Expo and what I'm going to say at Expo. So there's always been the next accomplishment ahead of me that I have to tackle, the next challenge. So for me, I don't know in my whole entire life that I've ever had a time when I sat down and said, as I told you, I've always lived in the future. I never live in the past.
Yeah.
But I've missed living in the moment way too often. And I'm looking forward to trying to understand myself and how to live in the moment.
Yeah.
So for me, one of my goals in retirement is to sit down knowing there's nothing in front of me. So let's concentrate on this moment. And one of my, I take a lot from movies because I was a kid, 5 kids. You got sat in front of the TV, right?
Sure.
Even though I was an adult when I watched this movie, but Kung Fu Panda. You can learn from anything if you're humble enough and you keep your eyes and ears open.
Yeah.
And there's a point in the movie where it says, the past is history, the future is a mystery. Today, wait, let me see if I can do this right. The past is history, the future is a mystery. Today is a gift, which is why they call it the present. And I just thought, wow, for my whole life, I've probably missed unwrapping the present because I was thinking about the next present or how do I get that and wrap the next one.
Sure.
So my goal is to do that. And then I have hobby goals and one of the things is I've always been kind of struggling with my faith and who I am and God and all that, and I think I've come to a good point. I would like to spend some time reading and actually understanding the Bible.
Interesting.
And pursuing riding a motorcycle and driving a convertible and playing some golf and working out more and a lot of other things. And
painting.
And painting.
Yes.
I went back to painting. But I think to answer your question directly, what is Polly and I think we're just looking forward to spending time together and enjoying every moment together. And then the short term, in a month from now, we have a trip to Italy.
I was going to bring it up if you weren't. With who?
With a former coach that I
Patty
built
Myers.
a great relationship. And anybody that's been around for a while loves Patty Myers and knows her. She retired a few years ago. We've come to become great friends with her and her boyfriend Herb, and we're going to Italy with them.
How long are you going for?
They might be there a little longer because we're not flying together because they're obviously in a different state. But we're going for 10 days. I think they might be going for 14 or more.
Oh, that's great. Do you guys have it all planned out?
They do.
They've been.
My prerequisite was I don't like sitting on a plane if I don't have to. So if I'm going to fly all the way to Europe, I have to qualify this. You all figure out what we're doing, and I'm just showing up that day packed. And they said, okay, you got it. So thank you to Herb and Patty and Polly for planning my vacation that's coming up.
That's going to be great. Just kind of wrapping up. What advice would you have? Let's do two-parter. Okay. What advice would you have for members in looking back and seeing those who've done well and those who've struggled and the wins and the losses? What advice would you have for members on how to be more successful?
I think over the course of coaching, I've kind of seen there's this area that just a thought process may help. One part is that, which I've talked about a lot, forget about what you know. Start looking towards what you don't know and find the people who know it so you don't have to break a leg to get it accomplished, right?
Yep.
So I think when you think I want to be a bigger business or I want to retire at a certain point or I want to hire more technicians or I wish we were more profitable, stop banging your head against the wall and doing the same thing over and over. First, humble yourself and go, others have done it. let me open up my mind and heart and go, what could I learn from them? Whether that's your coach, another member.
Sure.
So forget about what you know, look towards what you don't know.
Yeah.
That would be one. The second thing is, and I alluded to this earlier, you can't get to a destination if you don't know where you're going. And one of the reasons why I've been fortunate enough maybe to be able to work at a place or have a position or be able to retire early is that I have set a goal, a destination where I want. And I think what happens with our members is sometimes they get so involved in working in the business, they don't work on the business. And part of working on the business is putting a goal out there and then working backwards from it and say, well, how do I actually hit that goal?
Yeah.
And in my life, it's been 5 years. I put 5-year goals in every 5 years. I just every year, it's like, what's the next 5 years going to look like?
Yeah.
And I think if I can give any member or any technician or whomever who starts in the business and say, don't go in every day and just do and hope you wind up where you want to go. Put a date in a calendar and say, on this date, here's where I want to be. The worst case, you won't make it. But you'll at least make progress. And once you know where you want to go, work backwards from that date and put goals in place that are incremental to get there.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you're more likely to meet your goals and get to your destination than not.
Yeah, I love it. How about advice for maybe a new coach, or maybe like a Michael Zeller that changed his career to chase this crazy dream and goal of working in a coaching type company? What advice would you have for yourself then?
I think once again it's going to come down to and this goes in personal relationships, it goes in successful marriages, right? I mean, it can go in so many different directions. But if you try to tell yourself continually, it's not about you. It's about them,
right,
or her, or him, or whatever. If you continually do that, you're going to get better and you're going to make the right decisions every single time. And I'll share this. I don't get stage fright.
Right.
I don't go up on a stage. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me if it's one person, 1,000 people. I've never talked in front of a 10,000 or a stadium. I don't believe I would get nervous because I don't get nervous. And part of the reason is we get nervous because we worry about how I'm going to look,
right,
how people are going to view me. I don't get nervous because I always try to approach this that it's not about me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it was always like this, Bob, because honestly, I was probably a jackass and really not as nice a person when I was younger.
Okay.
And I think falling on my face a few times and skinning my knee and having some emotional abrasions along the way teaches you at a certain point, hopefully, that if it's about you and everything is always egocentric, you're never going to make an impact on others. And once you're gone and nobody's going to care. And probably some people are going to cheer, right? So once I started to learn that it's not about me, it's about others, you're going to be highly successful at what you do because that's really what it takes to be the best at what you do.
Last question.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a tough one, especially for you because you got to summarize it in one sentence.
Okay.
How would you summarize your career?
Here or in general?
Just in general. Take it wherever you want.
Okay. I would probably look back across everything I've done, particularly my last 9 years here, is that it's been equally humbling as it's been fulfilling. Because I would have never thought in my life I'd get the opportunity to meet, interact, learn from, and hopefully teach such enormously wonderful and talented people as I've had the opportunity to do here.
Michael, thank you. We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thanks, Bob. I'm going to miss you, big man.
The Successful Contractor podcast is part of the CertainPath family. CertainPath builds successful home service businesses and has for over 25 years. We do it by providing contractors with a proven path to success. professional coaching, software solutions, and a member community of 1,000 plus strong. Doubling your sales with a 20% net profit and an inspiring company culture is all possible. Let us show you the way. With CertainPath, success is made certain. Visit www.mycertainpath.com or call 888-909-6604 for more information.